"You're a disgrace," my dad yelled as I was kicked out of my own home. 15 years later, my cousin's lie unraveled, but it was too late. My name is Nathaniel Hayes, and when I was 22, one falsehood broke everything I believed I understood about family, love, and trust. I was a senior in high school, with my entire future ahead of me. My parents, David and Martha, were always proud of me for aspiring to the profession of architecture. At least, I think they were. Then one night, my cousin Chloe sat in our living room, her hands trembling and tears streaming down her face. She turned to my parents and stated, "Nathaniel got me pregnant." I recall giggling in surprise. "Chloe, stop. That's not true, and you know it," I pleaded, my voice cracking. But Chloe buried her face in my mother's arms, sobbing. My father stood there, his face contorted with wrath. "Pack your belongings, Nathaniel. You will not disgrace this family any longer." I went to my knees. "Dad, please. I didn't do this. Just give me a DNA test when the baby comes. You'll see the truth." My father looked away. My mother screamed, "How could you do this to your own cousin?" Then, with tears in her eyes, my girlfriend Sophia murmured, "I can't believe you. I don't even know who you are," as she walked out. By the morning, everyone at school knew. The stares, whispers, predator, manipulator, and liar. Each phrase pierced deeper than the previous. I couldn't handle it. I dropped out of school only weeks before graduation, leaving town with only a duffel bag. I drove 4 states away, stayed in inexpensive hotels, and found employment on construction sites. Long, terrible days in the sun, but I was determined to survive. Years passed and I worked my way up. I saved every dime, learnt every trade, and started my own business. From the outside, I seemed like a success story. But inwardly, I felt the weight of betrayal. When my father died, no one contacted me. I discovered out a week later while going through Facebook, gazing at images of a funeral I hadn't been invited to. Meanwhile, Chloe thrived. My parents, out of remorse, paid for her education. She married Alex, a polished lawyer, and they created the ideal life. Holiday greetings, happy family photographs, all I had hoped for. Then, just weeks ago, their son Max became seriously ill. He required a liver transplant. Chloe was not a match. Desperate, my brother James offered. Seeing as we have the same blood type. He contacted later and said, "I figured if he's really your boy, I had to step up." However, when the physicians tested him, bewilderment filled the room. The doctor added, "You're not a match, and there's no biological relationship between you and the child." That's when the truth hit. Max is not my son. He never was. Chloe had lied. And for 15 years I bore the consequences for something I never did. Now my phone won't stop buzzing. My mother is weeping on voicemail. "Danny, please come home. We made a mistake." James implored. "You were right all along, man. Please, let's fix this." Even Sophia, after all these years, messaged me. But I do not respond. I made my existence without them brick by brick, scar by scar. Now they want me back. And it isn't the worst part. It's only been one day since my cousin Chloe's life shattered under the weight of reality. For 15 years, I carried it like a stone chain around my chest, pulling me down into quiet, resentment, and a life I made on my own as my family turned away. I believed exposing her lies would set me free. Instead, I feel as if I'm trapped in a strange limbo, neither vindicated nor at peace, but somewhere between wrath and tiredness. I had a terrible time sleeping that night after learning the truth. My phone flashed up constantly on the bedside table, buzzing so often that it banged against the wood like an incessant alarm. Calls, voicemails, messages, and my mother, brother, uncles, aunts, and cousins, who had not spoken my name in over a decade, all remembered my existence. I left it there and gazed at the ceiling, my chest tight with the flow of memories. The sharpest of all was the night when Chloe, teary and shivering, said the words that destroyed my life. "Nathaniel got me pregnant." At the time, I was 19. 19. With my entire future ahead of me, grades good enough for scholarships, and admission letters ready to be opened. Within weeks of her deception, it was all gone. I dropped out of school because I knew no one would believe me. That the murmur of a DNA test was drowned out by a flood of fury. My father's displeasure was the loudest. He spit my name as if it were garbage. My mother wailed, as if she had lost her son. My brother stared at me as if I were a stranger who had entered our home. Sophia, the girl I loved, gave me nothing but a look of disgust. At the age of 19, I walked out of that house with a single duffel bag and slept wherever I could afford. I toiled hours stacking shelves and days lugging bricks, my hands blistered, while Chloe attended college, her tuition paid for by the same family that had abandoned me. The resentment has never left me. Not in 15 long years. And now, a day after the truth is revealed, they stand outside my door. When I drew back the curtain that morning and saw sunlight carving sharp lines across the blinds, I froze. My brother James's old truck, the rusted one he drove in high school, was parked at the curb. My mother stood beside it, resting against the hood. Her shoulders were slumped, and her arms were firmly wrapped about herself, as if she was bracing against more than just the chilly morning breeze. "Danny," she shouted, her raspy voice echoing across the street. "Danny, please open the door and let us talk," James said, his voice calmer but tinged with desperation. "You don't have to say anything. Just give us a few minutes. That's all we want." I remained in the hallway, gazing at the door, my fingers quivering as it approached the handle. For a brief moment, I wished to open it, go outside, and feel my mother's arms wrap around me like they had when I was a youngster. But then came the flashback. My father's eyes were full of fire as he labeled me a disgrace. The anger in Chloe's voice. My relatives whispered behind closed doors that I was a monster. Where were the voices then? I took a step back, my heart hammering. I would not respond. My mother's voice trembled as she tried again, tears spilling through her words. "Danny, it wasn't your fault. We know that now. Please don't shut us out." James opened the door. Not too hard, but enough to have the sound reverberate in my skull. "Danny, I beg you, don't let this be the end." I remained mute. I heard muffled weeping, shuffled footsteps, the bang of a truck door, and the roar of the engine as it rolled down the street. Only then did I allow myself to breathe, and what came out of my lungs was more bitter than air. I persuaded myself that was the end of it, and that I could resume my normal life. I was mistaken. Later that day, I arrived at the construction site where I work. Dust hung heavy in the air, and sunlight glinted off the steel beams. I'd rolled up my sleeves, perspiration soaking my back. When I heard it, it was James's voice. "Danny." I looked around, and there he was, standing in the center of the site, his face tired but resolute. The workers halted their work. Metal clanged to quiet, and drills sputtered and stalled. Every eye was on us. James came carefully, hands raised, as if he was scared I might flee. "I know you don't want me here, but I had to come. You don't understand how sorry I am, how sorry we all are." I clenched my teeth, my voice low and fierce. "You shouldn't be here." He continued to approach. "We were wrong. I was wrong. I should have stood by you. I should have fought for you. Instead, I stayed quiet while you lost everything. While you were 19 and begging us to believe you. I just stood there and I'll regret it for the rest of my life." My crew shuffled uneasily, watching the heat rush through me, embarrassment and rage entwined. I turned aside and walked back to the house's half-built structure. James yelled, "Danny, don't do this. Just one conversation. That's all I'm asking." I paused, whirled around, and my words cut like glass. "One conversation. You had 15 years, James. 15 years while I clawed my way out of the dirt, while I slept in motels and worked myself bloody. You could have asked for one conversation then, but you didn't." His eyes shined as his lips parted, but I turned back and went away. Dust whirled around my boots, and behind me, stillness hung thick as stone. That night, news began to spread around the family. Chloe, previously known as the Golden Girl, was condemned in every whispered talk. Relatives who had previously praised her bravery mocked her name. They dubbed her a liar and a thief who drained their money for her studies while I struggled to make ends meet. The tide had changed, but it was too late for me to care. Chloe's world was disintegrating. Her son Max deteriorated in the hospital, his tiny body waging a hopeless struggle. Her spouse, Alex, couldn't take the falsehoods anymore. As a lawyer committed to the truth, he packed his things and departed, unwilling to stay in a house based on falsehood. Even though she had damaged me, I couldn't harden my heart against Max. He was innocent, a youngster caught up in the aftermath of his mother's falsehoods. That notion seared me from within. Calls poured in from uncles, aunts and cousins. Their comments are sickly sweet with remorse. We always had doubts. We never believed her, not fully. Lies, all of them. Where were these doubts when I was 19 and begging for a test? Where were they when I had to leave my school, my future, my life? And then came a shock. My email pinged that evening as I sat at my computer, the lamp's faint light throwing shadows. An email. The sender's name made my blood run cold. Uncle Richard is Chloe's father. My palms shook as I clicked it open. His comments were brief, yet they struck like a hammer. Nathaniel, I know you have no reason to hear from me. I know the damage is irreversible, but you should know that your father left something for you in his will. I will not tell you what it is, but I beg you. Come home and see for yourself. If you want to go again later, no one will stop you. I sat back, my chest tight, my mind racing. My father, the guy who had dismissed me and refused to even look at me after Chloe's remarks, had left me something. Why was there guilt? A harsh reminder of what I'd lost. Was it anything else entirely? For the first time in 15 years I felt unsure. Should I go? Should I check what he left me? Should I let the past rot where it belongs? I don't have the solution yet. But I do know this. The narrative isn't over. And for all of you who have been following me thus far, I guarantee there will be more updates. Please like, comment, and subscribe to see more videos like this one. And just hitting the notification bell, you'll never miss a video. The first update concerns the falsehood that robbed my family. Driving back into the place I departed when I was 19 was like walking into an overexposed snapshot. Everything looked the same. Faded, washed-out stores, crumbling pavements, and the same rusty water towers standing vigil against the sky. I'd spent 15 years erecting barriers around me. I believed the walls would keep this place out of my life forever. But here I was, crossing an invisible boundary that I had promised myself I would never cross again. The air seemed thick, like if the town knew my past. My phone buzzed constantly on the seat behind me, the screen flashing with texts and missed calls from my mother and brother. Danny, please pick up. We need to talk. Just give us a chance. The words gleamed on the glass, but I didn't pick up the phone. Every vibration felt like a knock on a locked door in my chest. I drove by the cafe where Chloe used to giggle with her companions while I walked by with my head down, burning beneath the steps. It was still there, with its neon sign shimmering in the twilight. And suddenly, as if fate were testing me, I heard my name. Danny. Nathaniel Hayes. I turned and froze. Tom Harris and Caleb Reed, two faces I hadn't seen since high school, were heading down the sidewalk toward me. They were once pals and teammates, the type of lads who pledged beneath the lights of Friday night that they would never desert one another. Tom paused a few steps away and scratched the back of his neck. His hair had thinned, his waistline had grown, but his eyes still conveyed the remorse I remembered from the night Chloe's lie destroyed me. Man, I can't believe it's really you. Caleb shuffled nervously. We heard you'd left town for good. Danny, listen, we're sorry. Back then, when Chloe said what she said, none of us. He trailed off, shame heavy in his voice. You didn't believe me. I concluded for him, my tone harsher than I had intended. Tom's jaw stiffened. We should have. I knew it didn't feel right. We didn't want to get in the middle of it. Everyone was against you. We went along and we shouldn't have. I studied both. Watch how their wedding bands gleamed beneath the street lamps as they talked about their wives, children, and the small lives they'd made while I was struggling to survive 4 states away. Every word drove the chasm between us greater. I mustered a faint grin. I'm glad it all worked out for you. I walked away, their voices following me down the street until they gave up. That evening, I met Uncle Richard in a little cafe on the outskirts of town. The aroma of coffee and fried food hung in the air, while the talk of residents echoed in the background. When I saw him, my chest clenched. He had gotten older, with largely gray hair and a slimmer body, yet his eyes retained a sadness that appeared to empty him out. When I approached, he stood and grabbed my hand with both of his. Danny, he murmured. Quietly, as if he worried it would shatter. I'm glad you came. I wasn't sure you would. I sat across from him, the weight of years pushing down. Why did you reach out after everything? His shoulders dropped. Because someone has to tell you the truth about your father. He wasn't the man you remember at the end. Danny carried regret every single day. He never stopped thinking about you. I felt the old rage stir. He threw me out. He looked me in the eye and told me I wasn't his son anymore. He didn't even ask me if it was true. Bob's eyes clouded with sadness. You're right. He failed you. But in his later years it tore him apart. He searched for you, Danny. He even hired a private investigator last year. He bought a plane ticket. He was going to see you, face you, beg your forgiveness. The word hit me like a hammer. My breath caught. That's not possible. It is, Bob muttered. But a heart attack took him days before he was meant to leave. He died before he could make things right. I slapped a shaky hand on my face, my eyes blurred by the tears I couldn't stop. For years I convinced myself that my father despised me and died unaware of the reality. And now for the horrible twist. He hadn't loathed me by the end. He had wanted me back. My voice cracked. He never knew I was innocent. He died thinking I was guilty, but willing to forgive me anyway. Bob leaned across the table and squeezed my hand. Yes, he wanted peace. He wanted his family whole again, even if he couldn't undo the past. Then he drove me to the lawyer's office. The structure was tiny and brick-faced, with windows that glowed softly in the twilight. Inside, the lawyer sat across from us, a somber man with narrow spectacles and a file ready on his desk. He gently opened it, slipping documents toward me. Your father made arrangements. He wanted you to have this, Nathaniel. My hands trembled while I read. A bank account with $300,000 saved and expanded throughout the years. Beyond there, a deed, a lakeside house, a site I recalled as a youngster, where I used to run barefoot over the grass, the water glistening like liquid glass in the sun. My throat constricted, and tears flowed freely. My father, who had abandoned me, had left me this, a lifeline, an opportunity to start again. He died believing I was guilty. But Dad still wanted me to have a future and be connected to this family in some way. I buried my face in my hands, sobbing. He never knew the truth. He never knew what she did. Bob's voice was kind. He knew he loved you. That was enough for him in the end. That night, I couldn't stomach returning home. Instead, I sat in a tavern on the outskirts of town, the lights dimmed, the air dense with smoke and the whispers of strangers. A tumbler of whiskey remained untouched in front of me. I looked into it and saw not my mirror, but the boy I had once been, broken and sent out at 19. The scrape of a chair interrupted my thoughts. I turned and felt my chest constrict. It was Alex, Chloe's husband. His face was creased with tiredness, and his eyes were piercing with purpose. He drew closer, his voice calm but with a hint of urgency. I need the truth, Nathaniel. All of it. Tell me what she did. I met his gaze, as solid as steel. She lied. She ruined me. At 19 I had to drop out of school. I lost my family, my future. I left this town in disgrace while she went to college on their money. And for 15 years, the weight of her lie crushed me. Alex's jaw tightened, and his hands clenched against the bar. She destroyed everything for you, and she thought she'd never have to pay for it. His voice sank to a snarl. You can't let her walk away from this, Nathaniel. You need to hold her accountable for what she did. Sue her and drag her into court. Don't let her wreck your life, and then rebuild hers as if nothing happened. His words pierced me, triggering emotions I hadn't felt in years. The desire for justice, retaliation, and regaining what was stolen. Now, as I sit at my computer with the deed to the lake house beside me and the screen's glow lighting my face, I can hear Alex's voice ringing in my thoughts. For so long all I wanted was distance. But maybe distance is no longer enough. The narrative is far from done. And for those who are following along, I guarantee additional updates. The second update sees the mysteries finally being revealed. Sleep eluded me that night. I tossed and turned on the mattress of the half-renovated lake cottage. The ceiling fan clicked quietly above me, like a ticking clock that I could not stop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's expression. Lines deeper than I recalled, eyes clouded with the despair that had followed me to exile. He had gone to his grave believing I was guilty. That was the fact that choked me more than anything else. Another fact was making its way to the top. One of my cousins had been hiding for almost a decade. The storm broke the next afternoon. Gossip spread rapidly from the hospital halls, whispered by nurses, overheard by guests, and carried like wildfire across the little town. It came to me via a late-night message from an old high school friend, Matthew, whom I hadn't spoken with since I was 19. Dan, the note stated, you need to know this. She tested 7 men. 7. They eventually located the genuine father. I'm Halverson, the gym teacher. Can you believe it? I dropped the phone and stared into the dark light of the room, the name ringing in my head. Mr. Halverson, our gym instructor, the man who had yelled at me to sprint until my lungs burned, smiled at me when I struggled with the pull-up bar, and lived on the outskirts of town in that dismal house with peeling siding. My cousin had shattered my life by pointing a shaking finger at me despite the fact that she had always been with him. Rage, icy and suffocating, rushed through me. I remembered my father's face, my mother's angry remarks, and my brother's quiet. Everyone believed her. And all this time, the truth had been simmering below the surface. The next morning, I found myself in the office of Richard Crowley, a lawyer suggested by a former colleague. His office smelled of dust and leather, and the walls were lined with heavy volumes that had not been touched in years. He urged me to a chair and looked at me with piercing, searching eyes. Tell me everything, he asked. I did. Every information poured forth. The allegation, my family's treachery, the lover who fled, and the years of exile. Richard listened attentively, his pen scraping over a yellow legal pad. When I finished speaking, he leaned back and tapped his pen against the surface. Nathaniel, you have a case. This isn't just a personal tragedy. This is defamation, libel, and damages stretching over 15 years. Your cousin's lie cost you your education, your reputation, and your family. Now with the DNA evidence and the hospital gossip confirming the truth, we have leverage. A strong case. If you're willing to fight, I can help you. I gulped hard, my hands shaking. For the first time in years, I felt a fire inside me. Not just wrath, but purpose. I left his office and headed to the lake cottage, my father's final present. It appeared weary, as if waiting for someone to love it back to life. Cracked shutters hang freely. The porch steps sagged, and ivy climbed the walls as if it had taken control. I stood there, the key in my palm, talking into the still air. You wanted me to have this, Dad. Maybe this is where it begins again. Renovating my home became my therapy. The smell of sawdust, the sensation of sandpaper polishing aged wood, and the gratifying thump of a hammer on nails. It kept me calm, but it also brought me face to face with spirits. One afternoon, I went to the local hardware shop to get paint and tools. And there she was, Laura, my ex. The girl who had once held my hand under the bleachers, promised me forever, and then dropped me like a stone when my cousin's falsehood poisoned the air. Her hair was short and nicely groomed, and a gold wedding band glistened on her hand as she rang up a customer. She halted for a second, gazing at me as if she'd seen a ghost. Nathaniel. Her voice broke, the same voice that had once murmured love in my ear. I didn't know you were back. I clasped the goods in my hands, every muscle tense. Laura, I said bluntly. She took a step closer, her eyes sparkling. I'm so sorry for everything. I was 19. I didn't know what to believe, and I was scared. I should have stood by you, but I... Her words became noise. The betrayal still stung too deeply. I dropped the products on the counter, slipped the cash over, and turned away. Nathaniel, please, she pleaded, despair in her voice, but I walked away without looking back. My chest felt like it was collapsing in, but I refused to let her have the joy of seeing me crumble. That night, in the stillness of the study facing the dark lake, I unlocked my laptop. I had been carrying the weight of quiet for 15 years, but I was tired of hiding. My fingers trembled as I typed, describing every aspect of my trauma. The allegation, the exile, the years spent rebuilding my life while my cousin profited handsomely from my parents' guilt. I finished with the truth. The DNA test revealed that I was never the father. Then I pushed the publish button. By dawn, my phone had exploded. Notifications came in by the hundreds. Old classmates, who I hadn't heard from in years, were tagging, commenting, and sharing. Nathaniel, I'm really sorry. We should have known better. You did not deserve this. She completely damaged your life and got away with it. Unbelievable. Even those who had formerly mocked at me in the corridor expressed regrets. Some tagged my cousin personally, demanding answers. Then I saw it. My younger brother James had said, "I'm sorry, Dan. I should have been there. I should have told you about Dad. I don't expect forgiveness." His words cut me like a razor. That evening, he arrived to the lake home. I saw him standing by my truck, the setting light throwing a golden shade across his face. He looked older, burdened down by remorse, and his voice was barely above a whisper. "Dan," he answered. "Please, can we talk?" I crossed my arms and tightened my chest. "What's left to say?" He gulped. I was a youngster too. I didn't know how to handle it. I accepted what everyone was saying. I thought, "You felt I was guilty." I snapped. "And instead of staying by me, you abandoned me. You let me to rot. Do you know what it's like to sleep in a vehicle at 19 because your family thinks you're a monster?" His eyes were filled with sorrow. "I regret it every single day. I swear I do, but I can't undo it." "You can't," I said coldly. "And you can't give me back what I've lost. My education, my father, and my life. You didn't even tell me he was dead. Do you know how much I hate you for that?" James's shoulders dropped. "I was wrong. I was a coward. I don't expect forgiveness, but please don't shut me out forever." I turned away from him, the agony in my chest terrible. "You're 15 years too late, James." I entered the home and shut the door. The stillness was terrible. My hands shook as I sat at my father's desk and opened the laptop once more. I had more to say. The world needed to hear. And as I typed, one thing ran through my head. This was not over. Definitely not. There will be further updates. Final update. Finally, justice was served. The courthouse was full, with every seat groaning from the weight of individuals who had formerly murmured about me, averted their heads as I passed, and crossed the street rather to meet my gaze. I could feel their glances on the back of my neck as I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands flat on the beautiful mahogany surface, throat dry, chest heaving with each breath. The study had been 2 weeks. I spent 2 weeks hearing my life examined in cold clinical terms. For 2 weeks, attorneys referred to me as the plaintiff, the accused turned victim, rather as Nathaniel Hayes, the guy. Claire avoided my eyes for 2 weeks. Her once sharp jaw dropped in embarrassment, and her husband sat stiffly at her side like a stranger. And now the moment had arrived. The judge's voice sounded out through the silence, calm and methodical. In the matter of Hayes versus Hayes, the jury finds in favor of the plaintiff, Nathaniel Hayes. The defendant was forced to pay $1.5 million in damages. Gasps echoed around the room. My knees almost crumbled under the table. I held the edge so firmly that my knuckles became white. The words had sunk into me like sunlight after years of darkness. I'd won. But it wasn't just about money. It was about being vindicated. It was about finally bringing the truth to light. "Ms. Hayes," the judge added, "you will also publish a public apology to Mr. Hayes acknowledging your false accusation and the damage it has caused." Claire stood slowly, her hands quivering as she unfolded a piece of paper and began speaking. "I, Claire Hayes, fraudulently accused my cousin Nathaniel Hayes of fathering my kid, even though I knew he was not the father. My actions resulted in him being downed, losing his degree, family, and years of his life. I genuinely regret the pain I caused him." Her words rang around the chamber, thin and brittle. No one applauded. No one expressed compassion. They merely looked, their judgment as solid as stone. Claire's voice cracked with the final phrase, and her head bowed low. When she glanced up, her spouse had left. Robert had slipped out of the courtroom before she could begin. When the judge dismissed us, I rose, my legs shaky and my pulse racing. As I went out of the courthouse, the spring air hit me hard. The crowd outside dispersed, and there they were. My family. My mother stood in front of me, her hands knotted as if she were keeping herself together. Her face was pale and her lips trembled. Behind her James hovered, his face filled with shame, his gaze locked on me. "Nathaniel," my mother said, edging closer. "Nathaniel. Please." I came to a stop right before her, the courthouse doors still slamming shut behind me. The air smelled vaguely like cut grass and automobile exhaust, but I could only taste bitterness. "You threw me out," I said, my voice angry but firm. 19 years old. I beg you to believe me, and you call me a liar. You didn't just turn your back, you kicked me out. Do you have any idea what that did to me?" Her face collapsed, and tears flowed freely. "We were scared. We thought. You thought I was guilty," I snapped. "And instead of standing by me, you destroyed me. You let me starve. You let me freeze. I was a boy, Mom. Your boy." Her shoulders trembled from sobbing, but I felt no relief. Only the empty agony of years lost. James moved forward. "Dan," he spoke quietly. "I should have been your brother. I should have told you about Dad. I should have been there." I turned on him, my words burning and searing. "You weren't. You stayed. You kept your head down while I fought to survive. You sat at the dinner table while I was sleeping in my car. You didn't even tell me when he died." My voice cracked. "Do you know how much I hate you for that?" He flinched as though I had hit him. "I know," he muttered. "And I'm sorry every day. I'm sorry." I shake my head. "You're 15 years too late." The quiet between us was agonizing. I turned aside and walked past them both, my chest tight and my breathing ragged. Chloe's life rapidly crumbled after that. Alex filed for divorce within a month, and their custody fight was ugly. The truth of her falsehoods, the public apologies, and the harm she had inflicted all came tumbling down. Ultimately, the judge gave Alex full custody of Oliver. Witnessing her breakdown in court was like witnessing a house of cards crash, unavoidable and permanent. Oliver's procedure was successful. I paid him a visit in the hospital shortly after. The aroma of antiseptic lingered in the air, and the repetitive beeping of machinery broke the calm. He looked pallid and smiled faintly, his little hand grasping an action figure. "Hi," I replied quietly, drawing up a chair. "I'm Nathaniel, your cousin." He looked at me attentively. "My dad says you're good. Are you?" The question nearly destroyed me. I swallowed hard. "I try to be," I explained. "And if you ever need someone, you can call me anytime." His eyes brightened and he nodded. For a brief time, the years of bitterness faded. I relocated my construction company back home, spending the losses in expansion. New trucks, new equipment, and new contracts. The social media post that began as a cry for justice became the cornerstone of my future. People wanted to see me succeed. Jobs flooded in, and within a year, my firm was one of the most reputable in the state. I drove past the lake house one evening, the porch lights shining brightly against the water. I thought about my father. He didn't survive to see me vindicated, but his dying gift gave me the opportunity to rebuild. I muttered into the darkness, "I'm trying, Dad. I'm really trying." Chloe, meanwhile, became a pariah. In town, she went by the moniker Poison. She lost her position at the legal firm. Her friends stopped calling, and her relatives murmured her name in hatred. She went through the streets, her head lowered. The once proud woman is reduced to murmurs and pitying looks. As for me, I began therapy. The first session was difficult. I sat stiffly on the chair, looking at the clean clock ticking on the wall, the aroma of lavender thick in the air. But gradually, I began to process the years of wrath, sadness, and shame. Slowly, I started to heal. My family is calling me rather frequently right now. I let the phone ring before responding, keeping talks brief and polite. I wasn't prepared to sit across from them. Wasn't prepared to share a table or a meal. But I said, baby steps. It was the first time in 15 years that I wasn't defined by a falsehood. I wasn't the boy who was kicked out. I was Nathaniel Hayes, a guy who had endured, fought back and succeeded.